Hello, everyone, and welcome to another episode of the Lunch Hour Sports Podcast. Here with your hosts, Jacob Smedley.
Sam Betts.
Justin Reedhammer.
Pete Alvarante, and Nathan Romanoff.
Our topics today include the end of the season NBA award winners. We have the award winners in front of us. No, we don't have the script. It's already happened. We're going to be breaking down the award winners. Then we've got some NFL topics. We've got three of them today. We're looking at some overhyped young QBs. The Tush Push vote is over. We'll break it down. And a Hard Knocks, a new team, will be featured on the next season. We got the end of the soccer season across the pond. Nate will break it down, and we'll wrap up with an MLB ban removal. Some final thoughts and action-packed episode. Let's get started. Sam had some technical difficulties. Are you all right, Sam? Are you all right? Are you ready to go?
Everything seems to be working well right now. Not really sure what was going on there, but hey, the show goes on. So we're going to be talking about some NBA award winners. They've announced all the awards for each category, and we're going to go through them. So let's go over the MVP, most valuable player. This is one that's always very people are very excited to see. We had Shea Gilgeous-Alexander, we had Nikola Jokic, and Giannis Antetokounmpo, and Shea Gilgeous-Alexander won it. And this was a very young, talented star who's been rising through the ranks of the NBA and has kind of finally been put into the spotlight and getting an award he deserves so well. Not that Nikola Jokic and Giannis don't deserve the MVP award. They've both won multiple awards, Nikola winning three of them, Giannis winning two himself. But I think this is kind of just showing the prowess that Shea Gilgeous-Alexander kind of brings to the NBA and how much of a dominant star he's been. He's averaged 32.7 points per game, 5 rebounds per game. 6 assists per game, and then has also shot 51.9% from the field. And with how the Thunder are playing, they're looking to make a pretty big playoff push, and Shea Gilgeous-Alexander has been a leader of this young team, and they have the chance to kind of win it all here for the NBA championship.
Yeah, I think, again, like you mentioned, Sam touched on it there with the MVP, of course. Every year there's debate. I mean, the last 5 years, Nikola Jokic, just what an incredible run. You know, you can really, if you bring up stats, you can certainly make the argument he could have had a five-peat, you had the Joel Embiid win in 23, and here most recently the SGA win. And, I think people need to relax. I think people need to relax on the debates with Jokic or SGA. I understand it. You're comparing a big man that is really setting himself up to be one of the best big men we've ever seen, if he hasn't done that already, with his skill beyond the arc, with his passing. His defense leaves a little bit to desire. I think that's been well evident in the most recent postseason exits for the Nuggets, but just absolutely incredible numbers. The 40-20-20 performance during the regular season, just stuff we've never seen of before, especially out of a center, a nearly 7-footer. But I think people are really discrediting what SGA did in his development. Again, the whole free throw merchant thing, I understand it, but he has a skill. Don't be going at him. Go at the NBA for calling all these fouls. Why are you yelling at SGA for exploiting a rule? He's drawing contact. He's elite at it. So, I mean, when you do that and you're also the best team in the league, I think well deserved. I think it's great that he's the MVP, and I think it's great for the league, international as well. Of course, Jokic as well, but, a Canadian-born player taking it home as well. So great on SGA. That's my stance. All the people that are like, SGA, Jokic, I think it's great. Can we just celebrate the one that won it and not complain?
Yeah, I agree,
That's all.
Jake. There's always going to be some rah-rah from everyone, depending on who should win, who should not win, who was who deserves the MVP more, stuff like that. But no, I think the NBA hit the nail on the head with this one. I think that SGA was very solid this season and deserves the MVP overall. Not obviously not discrediting the unicorn Nikola Jokic, but again, just kind of someone who's kind of shown that they deserve the spotlight. And I'm sure there's another MVP in Jokic's future anyway, so I'm not too worried that he got snubbed from this one. Let's move on. We're going to go to the Defensive Player of the Year, Evan Mobley of the Cleveland Cavaliers. This guy, I mean, 6 foot 11. I was kind of really wanted to look at his wingspan, so I looked it up. It's 7 feet 4 inch wingspan. The guy's very tall, very lanky. He averaged almost 2 blocks. He averaged almost one steal for the whole season. But I mean, with a guy who's that tall, that has such a wide wingspan to kind of block shots wherever he can, or and also just an intimidating defensive presence overall. He's definitely one of the leaders of this Cleveland Cavaliers team who was able to get them to the playoffs, obviously an early exit in the first round, but definitely a guy who has a very scary defensive presence overall. And he won this over Dyson Daniels, the young player from Atlanta, and Draymond Green, who's a multi-time winner as well. But I'm happy to see him, Evan Mobley, win it over Draymond Green for sure.
Little salt in the wound for Draymond. Yeah, I think going off of what you just talking about Evan Mobley for a second, of course, just such a huge part of the Cavs' success this year. What he did, kind of the elevation, not only of course defensively, he won the award, but also offensively as really their second most consistent scorer. You could even make the argument throughout the whole season because Garland dealt with injuries even through the postseason. So did Donovan Mitchell. We talked about it on our last episode with the injuries that were happening to them. So I mean, he was really, and he was out for a few games in the postseason, but the consistency through the regular season, and yeah, just his presence around the rim. I don't have the numbers in front of me, the percentages that people shot when he was, roaming around the rim, contesting shots, using that wingspan that you brought up. So great to see him win it. Again, it's so tough with Defensive Player of the Year because you've got great perimeter defenders, great interior defenders, kind of wings that can guard multiple positions. So I think it's so tough when you've got a guy like Mobley, but you also got a guy like Dyson Daniels that was just a steel machine on the perimeter. Didn't have the same defensive presence in the paint, but, props to Mobley and, glad that he won it as well. But look out, Sam, for those Thompson twins, Amen and Asar, two of the best defenders up and coming in the league. One of them, not both of them, I think, will win a Defensive Player of the Year at some
I agree
point.
with that, Jake. And yeah, Evan Mobley, just on the offensive side, he averaged 18 and a half points, averaged 9.3 rebounds, shot 55.7% from the field, and also from three, he shot 37%. So overall was a very consistent scorer and obviously winning Defensive Player of the Year, very heavy presence on defense. You talked about Dyson Daniels a little bit. We'll kind of skip over. We'll go to him. He actually won the most improved player in the NBA. So Dyson Daniels from the Atlanta Hawks, he averaged 14.1 points per game, 5.9 rebounds per game, 5.9, I'm sorry, 4.4 assists per game, and he shot 49.3% from the field. He actually won the award over two guys who I felt like had a very strong chance to win this award. Ivica Zubac, and then also Kate Cunningham. Those two guys were up for the award. Obviously, we've seen Kate Cunningham, former number one overall pick in the draft, playing for the Pistons right now, and helped the Pistons make a very big transition for their team overall, even getting them to the playoffs this year. Obviously, exited out after playing the Knicks, but definitely thought he had a very strong chance to win it, but like you said, Dyson Daniels definitely made an improvement uh, on the offensive side, and also, like you said, on the defensive side too.
Yeah, I think it's such a tough award too, and yeah, again, props to Dyson Daniels, traded from the Pelicans to the Hawks, getting this kind of new opportunity to be that running mate next to Trey Young, and was really elevated. I think his offensive game was what took the biggest leap. He was has really been a good defender the past 2 years, but he started shooting the ball better, was in control of the offense more in with second units with the Hawks. So again, it's not a discredit to him, but I think you bring up a good point, Sam. It's such a tough award where you've got other guys that they make improvements. Zubac was there really the whole season for the Clippers, kind of steadying the ship. Where Kawhi was still out, coming back, nearly a double double machine, and Cade Cunningham. I think that's another tough one because it's like, are we giving the most improved player to a guy that was great last year and just the stats went up as well and he continued his like trajectory? Or are we giving it to a guy that was like a bench role player and maybe ascended to a starter close to all-star production? I think it's a very tough, like, most improved is different in the eyes of different fans and executives and stuff like that. So I think it's tough. I know Tyrese Maxey won it, last year, a few years ago, just it was less like, yeah, I think he's a starter now. I think he's producing those like all star numbers. It's just so tough to judge. All star. Then he's getting better. Does he deserve it over this other guy who was, a bench player that elevated his numbers? So, but props to Daniels and love the other two
Yeah, I
options as
agree with
well.
that, Jake. Too. I think of me being a Raptors fan, Pascal Siakam in the 2018-2019 season when he won Most Improved Player after becoming a starter, getting into some All-Star selections. So I definitely kind of agree with that. It's a hard award to give out just because there's so many options and so many players do improve from their short time in the NBA and getting better, learning the league a little bit more. But no, congrats to Dyson Daniels on winning that. We'll go to Rookie of the Year now, Jake. This might be a hot take. I was going to ask you this before, but I'll say it. I don't know if this rookie class was as strong as we've seen in the past couple of years. Now, we did have a couple really good rookies come in, but had dealt with injuries. So we had like Zach Edey from the Grizzlies. We had Jared McCain from the 76ers, who performed really well for those past couple weeks until he had a meniscus surgery. So I feel like we had a lot of decent rookies kind of come in, but I don't think the class was as strong overall as some other classes that we had seen in the past, or even this next draft class coming up with guys like Cooper Flag, Ace Bailey, like guys of that caliber. I don't know if you would agree with me on that or not. I don't know if you have a take on that. If you'd like to mention anything before we get to the winner.
Yeah, I think that's a great point, Sam. And yeah, I think that there was no clear. Of course, Zachary Shea, the number one overall pick to the Hawks, he had a good season, but I think you bring up a very fair point. There was not that, Victor Wembanyama. There was no Cooper Flag that really took the league by storm necessarily, but I think you bring up some points of good depth. Jalen Wells had a really good rookie year for the Grizzlies. He was a second round pick that really filled a role for them. Jared McCain was picked 16. Khalil Ware was picked 15 for the Heat. He had a solid year again, but I think you're right on there. There wasn't a guy that really punched his ticket, but I will react to your winner because the winner had a very good season and is going to be a foundational part for a very good team in the Western Conference for years
So
to
yeah,
come.
Jake, I'll agree. Stephon Castle, winner of the Rookie of the Year for the Spurs. He averaged 14.7 points per game, 3.7 rebounds, 4.1 assists, and shot 42.8% from the field. And he won the award over Reece Shea and Jalen Wells, those two players that you mentioned. I know Reece Shea had a 30-point game at one point throughout the season, but. Yeah, Stephon Castle, he's going to be a part of a Spurs team, and he'll be a pretty vital part of that team as they kind of grow and become very dominant in the Western Conference, which I believe they will. Victor Wembanyama performed very well until he had a deep vein thrombosis in his arm, which most of the time you actually don't see. You see them a lot in the you see you'll hear of a calf DVT is what they call them, but yeah, very serious injury. But hopefully he's going to recover and he'll be good for next season. Being able to get De'Aaron Fox though, as a kind of like a young point guard to help lead this team as well. Jeremy Sochan, a couple really good players on the Spurs team that I think are that Stephon Castle is going to be able to help improve on and help this team get even some playoff contention, maybe even next season or definitely in the next 2 to 3 seasons, I would say.
Yeah, and just looking at Castle more specifically, drafted to kind of be a defense two-way point guard with, I mean, this is, of course, before they made the trade, and he really lived up to the bill as a kind of a two-way, multi-positional. He's a winner. I think that really showed on the court, despite not having Wemby, that he was still going 100 miles an hour, even though when they were out of the postseason contention. And he's going to be a focal point of this team. That you mentioned those names. They have the number 2 pick again, so they're going to add another young player, potentially a big name trade target that might be in Wisconsin that they might go after as well. So he's going to be at the heart of it, and he is really the most deserving, and can't wait to see him continue in this league for the Spurs.
Yeah, agreed, Jake. I think out of the rookies who had performed this year, I think he's the one who publicly has shown that he deserves this award. We have two more left on the bill here. We're going to go with the sixth man of the year. This one's always a fun one because these give the guys who come off the bench, but guys who are so pivotal in um, game to game NBA play and that really do make an impact for their team, even just off the bench. And the guy who won it is one I'd give it to him. He just made so many clutch shots. You see him come off the bench all the time, and he's a three-point threat for sure. It's Peyton Pritchard of the Boston Celtics. He shot 47.2% from the field, 14.3 points per game, 3.8 rebounds per game, and 3.5 assists per game. He won the award over Malik Beasley, who's been in the league for a long time and is definitely a good six man for the Pistons, and Ty Jerome. The He's from the Cavaliers. But yes, I agree with this award. Definitely, Peyton Pritchard is like I said, he's a 3 point shooter. Whenever he's on the outside there, he's gonna shoot a three and he's gonna most likely make it. And he's made some clutch shots before halftime, toward the end of games. So yeah, I like this award.
Yeah, I agree, Sam. I think Peyton Pritchard, of course, on the this Boston squad, won the championship last year. Of course, we did our prediction. Go check out our episode talking about the postseason predictions. There's some wild stuff in there and how that has played out. But with Peyton Pritchard, yeah, what he brings to this Celtics squad, he brings a different dynamic point guard play. Of course, they have two do-it-all guys in Derek White and Drew Holiday from that guard spot, but Peyton Pritchard is that more. He's the shooter. He initiates the offense, runs good pick and rolls. Like you said, Sam is clutch. Yeah, so all props to him. Another name that I think they left off the ballot, Naz Reid for the Minnesota Timberwolves. I think he has been a great sixth man, not only for what he does, spelling Julius Randle and Rudy Gobert, but what he can do playing alongside them. Just a lot of different skill sets that he has as well. But props to Peyton Pritchard. He really deserved it for one of the best teams in the league.
Yeah, definitely. And last player we'll come up with here is Coach of the Year. Obviously, this team unfortunately exited the playoffs pretty early here, but they had a really good season overall in the regular season. So we'll give it to here Kenny Atkinson of the Cleveland Cavaliers, 64 and 18. Had a 5-4 playoff record with 4 years of experience. So very young in his coaching career. So definitely had the Cavaliers really good, like I said, really good regular season. Was able to get them to the playoffs. So even in his young coaching career that he's had so far, I'm sure he'll have some more success in the future. He won the award over JB Bickerstaff of the Pistons and I'm going to probably butcher this name, but Udoka from the Rockets.
Hey, you did a pretty good job, Sam. Pretty good job. Yeah, Ime Udoka from the Rockets, and JB Bickerstaff, ironically, the former Cavaliers coach, coming in second for that award with his job with the Pistons. Yeah, I think this is tough as well because again, you talk about a Pistons team that had the worst record in the NBA a few years ago. Now they're in the playoffs. They're really one of the best young teams now established in the league. But yeah, what Kenny Atkinson did, his reputation with the Brooklyn Nets, and was kind of one of the scapegoats in that the big three with KD, with Harden, with Kyrie. He was one of the scapegoats who was outed out of town when they were putting that team together, and it really wasn't his fault. They were just trying to get all these great talents together, and goes to the Warriors as an assistant and then lands here in Cleveland, and they really just needed that. I think after last offseason, it was how is this group of guys with Mitchell, with Garland, with Mobley, who we talked about earlier, Allen, how are they all going to coexist? And really, they made the decision, they just needed another voice. They needed another voice, another mind to get them into their right spots. And yeah, props to Kenny Atkinson for it didn't really materialize in the postseason. There was some injury luck that didn't go their way, but during the regular season, an absolute juggernaut, and really props to him because they really had a lot of the same team. They had some guys, you mentioned Ty Jerome earlier as well, that really stepped up their play, but for the most part, traded one or two guys. It was mostly the same team, so huge props to Kenny Atkinson. And great job, Sam, on the awards. We've got the end of the playoffs coming up. We will surely have an episode breaking that down as the finals come close. But a season that is getting underway. OTAs, training camp is a few months away. Players are starting to report. Justin, we've got a few topics. Is this history here? We're covering a lot of different stuff in the NFL. What's going on?
Thank you, Jacob. Hopefully it goes quickly. That's at least what I'm planning for, but you know how we are. We like to talk, so we'll see what happens. But this first topic here, I was kind of inspired to do this first one. And in fact, it was Peter who inspired me, so I think I should let Peter take the reins here and introduce what we're talking about. So, Peter.
Ladies and gentlemen, I'd like to introduce our first topic of discussion, which is overhyping young QBs too soon. So, Justin and I were talking the other day, and I saw someone posted a post on their predictions of the best or the top five quarterbacks coming into the next NFL season. And there are a few names on those lists that I wasn't quite sure of. So Justin and I got down this rabbit hole of, are we overhyping these quarterbacks, these young guys, too soon? And what I want to hear from you guys, Nate, Jake, Justin, is what are your thoughts? Like, I mean, the first thing that my mind jumped to, Justin's mind jumped to, was CJ Stroud. You know, his first rookie year, he was having a lights out rookie season. I mean, he was doing incredible, getting all this hype in the offseason about how he's going to be a top five, top 10 quarterback this past season, and he hit a brick wall. Can we see that happening to other guys? Are we giving these young quarterbacks who have one great season way too much hype? What are your thoughts on this, boys?
For the CJ Stroud is obviously the perfect way to start this conversation because, yeah, in 2023, he had over 4,000 passing yards, like 23 touchdowns, only 5 interceptions. His rating was like 100. He did really well. He's one of the best quarterbacks in the league. So much so that for the following season, all of us thought, oh, he's going to be one of the best quarterbacks moving forward. And some of us, myself included, were dumb enough to draft him in fantasy very highly. And then it didn't pan out because the next season he had less touchdowns and double the interceptions, lower rating, so many less passing yards. So it was just it was like, what happened? Like, you go from this great first season when you know less to a season where you know more, you should do better, and you didn't do as well. And so, it's one of those things where in the off season we always say, hey, they're going to be the next guy, they're going to be great, but it doesn't always mean that they are going to be great the next season.
Yeah, I think that's a great point, Justin. I think another part of it is a handful of different factors. I think first is the hype that we bring into these guys with these top prospects. I'll just mention Shador Sanders, all the hype, even though he got picked way later than everyone thought. I mean, there's already that built-in hype, and the same thing. These top 10 picks are like these are guys that dominated at the college level, that are franchise changing guys. I'm going to, also mention Cam Ward, who now everyone's like, okay, this guy is expected to be the franchise changer. So there's already that level of expectation. They have that great season. So, the expectation was like here. It goes all the way up to here. Everyone's on cloud nine. And I think it goes into my next thought, which is, these are as much as we bash the bad teams and as much as we're like these teams stink, they're odd. These are NFL teams. These are coaches that are scouting, that look at watching the film constantly and recognizing, okay, this guy, this young quarterback always rolls out this way, always rolls out, always has this kind of like positioning when he's ready to throw through a zone coverage. So, I think it is on, but I think sometimes we do put too much expectations on these. I think it's 2 or 3 years. That's when, you hit that wall. You got to try and break through it because teams are going to adjust. Now, CJ Stroud, all these struggles, teams adjusted. What is he going to respond back to? How is he going to flip the script?
Yeah, exactly. And that's how it is with, a lot of these young quarterbacks. I like how you said about the expectation, especially these guys who are drafted early. They're hyped up. It's built in by the media. You see them in college. They come in with that expectation. And a guy like C.J. Stroud, who lived up to the hype in his rookie season, or even, went beyond it. I think we all agree that he surpassed the hype that was built in. And so then what does that do? It puts more expectation and more pressure on him going into his second year. And like you said, Jake, teams in the NFL are scouting. Coaches are watching every game. They are making adjustments. And that's what happened. He hit a wall. He had the sophomore slump, as you could call it, in his second year. It doesn't mean that he won't, return to the same heights he reached his rookie year. In fact, I have a good feeling that he will eventually, have a season like that again, whether it's next season or the season after that. But it's just that with hyping these quarterbacks up, I agree. I feel like you need to give it some time to breathe. I know Justin and Peter are going to get to his name. Jaden Daniels, obviously very similar situation. Came in, had a fantastic rookie season, and now same thing with CJ Stroud. That expectation, that hype is being put on him going into his second season when, teams are going to make adjustments for him. And I would not be shocked at all if his numbers are worse this season than they were his rookie season, just due to that fact.
Yeah, Nate, and it's interesting that you brought Jaden Daniels up because something that you and Jake and Justin a little bit brought up. I feel like the scouting people as in fans and everyday watchers don't realize in this game is that when you're being scouted, right? These teams are watching just like they watch CJ Stroud, right? Okay, CJ Stroud when he's going for a deep bomb to Tank Dell relies on the left side of the line more than the right side of the line, or he takes 5 steps back instead of 3 steps back. Like they're watching every minuscule motion that he's doing. So you wonder what teams are going to do for Jaden Daniels because Jaden Daniels, he likes to be in the pocket. He likes to move around in the pocket. He likes to work his space a little bit. So you're going to see teams play less attack the center and more protect the outsides in case he drops back and decides to swing out and throw a deep ball. Or, so well, it's going to be interesting to see how teams study Jaden Daniels. I do agree with Nate thinking that his numbers might drop a little bit just because teams now know what kind of player he is. But I also think that the media is almost like a double-edged sword. I feel bad for these guys who have all this hype around them, like Shador Sanders, Jackson Dart, Cam Ward in this draft class alone. Can you imagine, like, with all this NIL stuff and all this camera and videography stuff, and I know we're going to talk about this later with the Hard Knocks stuff, just hearing your name be called, like, oh yeah, this guy is going to be a top 10 quarterback in his first year, and he's going to put up great numbers, and he does it, and then he's like, okay, now he might have been the 13th best quarterback, but now, for example, CJ Stroud, he threw 600 some odd yards without throwing an interception. Next year is his year. Can you imagine how much pressure that puts on these quarterbacks to be like, holy crap, I got to perform now or else my numbers are going to tank. My desirability by other teams and trade value is going to tank if that were to happen one day. I feel for these guys, but at the same time, I think Nate and Jacob kind of mentioned it a little bit. Maybe I'm reading it a little bit into deep of what they're saying, but the media and the sports analysts love those big articles, I know. But if you as a fan could just take a step back and realize this is their rookie year, it's their welcome to the NFL moments, it's a whole new chapter in their story, and give them time to develop and then say, oh yeah, this is our franchise guy. That's what I think will help a lot of NFL fans understand their young quarterbacks more for the teams that they're rooting for than just saying, oh, well, the media said you're supposed to be top 5. Why aren't you?
Yeah, Peter, I think you bring up, I just got thinking about it. I think Patrick Mahomes, believe it or not, might also be another ingredient. You brought up the media. I just thought, Justin, were you thinking this?
I need to take over here, okay?
Okay.
Sorry, I don't usually do this.
Okay.
But this is exactly the next point I was going to bring up, where it was this, if you go back to 2016, this wasn't a conversation that we're having at this point. You know, you see a guy have a great season at quarterback and you think to yourself, okay, when's he going to hit the wall? That was your thought back in the day. But ever since Patrick Mahomes entered the league, he was amazing right from the start. And he never got worse, at least not enough, you know, because he's been in the playoffs every single year that he's been the starting quarterback. And then not long after him, the 2018 draft with Lamar Jackson, Josh Allen, and those guys start becoming amazing. Basically, the year after they're drafted, or the second year after, third year, like pretty instantly. And then Joe Burrow gets drafted, and he's amazing right away. And so that's kind of, I think, changed the way that we think about the young quarterback, where now we've seen these guys become the greatest of all time at the very early on stages of their career, or some of the greats of all time. So now we're thinking to ourselves, well, now this guy should be the next one, or this guy should be the next one. But we have to remember that it's not the same for every single guy. Not everybody can develop in the way that these guys have. So that's part of the sort of changing psychology of the sports media.
Go off, pop off, King. Pop off, King. Okay, Justin. There we go. Hey, and I brought it up. You ran with it. That's great. I think another thing too, the environment, the teams that these guys are with. Again, I know there's no lottery system. It's the worst team, that gets the picks and stuff like that. There's swaps and all that stuff. But some of these certain environments that these guys are brought, again, with Patrick Mahomes, he goes to this Chiefs team that has, Andy Reid there, that has a certain structure, has a kind of a formula that he can kind of find his way and develop. And some of these teams, CJ Stroud, they brought in Tank Dell with his draft. They brought in some of these other young guys where really it fed into that first year. He had a great year himself, but he had these other talented guys and a strong structure in place. So, some of these guys, it's very tough with limited resources to have that great. And we saw it with Caleb Williams last year. They struggled because they didn't have the resources in place. Now they do, and some people in the league are talking about him having that, rookie CJ Stroud year with all of the pieces that they have now in Chicago.
That's another very important aspect, too, when looking at the quarterback situation, is he is just one player. He is the most important player, but if you have nothing around him, if you do not have a viable offensive line or weapons in the receiving department, in the backfield, in the form of a running back or, tight end support, then you can't have this expectation for these quarterbacks to go out and perform at a level like Patrick Mahomes. or like Joe Burrow, because it's case by case. It's different for every team. Every quarterback walks into a different situation. Patrick Mahomes came in, sat a year behind Alex Smith. He had a good team that he walked into. With a lot of these top draft picks, it's not the case. You're not walking into a team where you have the ability to sit behind a veteran for a year and then have a team that's ready for a playoff push. Because a lot of these teams are drafting that high for a reason, as we all know. So you got to bring that expectation down a little bit.
It makes me think of Trevor Lawrence in a way, Like Trevor Lawrence had all of this hype surrounded behind him about how amazing he's going to be no matter what. Like he's a phenomenal quarterback, and he was a really good quarterback in college. He was his stats don't lie. We always say the stats don't lie. But he walked into Jacksonville with barely an O-line, and then Trevor Lawrence is just thrown in there, and the media and these sports analysts, TV shows, and all of them are like, oh, we're expecting Trevor Lawrence to turn the Jacksonville Jaguars around in 1 year. He's got to be 1 year guy. And I feel like it just adds this blanket layer of expectation from fans, from other players, from other coaches that may not truly understand this isn't reality. These media analysts and these expectations isn't an accurate depiction of how good these quarterbacks can be. And then they have a rough first year like Zach Wilson did. Mac Jones had a rough first year in New England, and these guys like Zach Wilson, Mac Jones, Trey Lance, Justin Fields, even a little bit, they're just considered sub-tier quarterbacks now because they were never given a true shot. That these teams just pass them on because they were never given that true shot that I do believe these young quarterbacks all deserve.
Yep, it is definitely something that I think we'll continue to see for at least the next few years until maybe some of these younger quarterbacks coming up eventually don't perform, and then maybe we'll pump the brakes on it. But for now, I guess we can move on to our next quick kick topic, which is the Tush Push, as was alluded to before. It ended up passing, not being banned, as it was close. It was only 22-10, I think, was the vote. So I'm sure it'll be back in discussion the next off season, probably with different verbiage for the rules. But let's just start off with, what are your thoughts on the Tush Push sticking around? You guys for it? You guys against it? How do you feel? I mean, I know two of you are Eagles fans, so I'm sure you guys have
one is more objective than the other.
Yes, I'm sure you have a strong opinion of some kind. So what's the thoughts? Lay it on me.
Sure, I'm glad it's sticking around. It's as long as you're not dragging the ball carrier, physically dragging and pulling them over the line or across the field, I don't see an issue with it. I think that there was no injuries that were caused by the Tush Push last year, so you can't say it's a dangerous play because there are no injuries related to the Tush Push. Oh, it's a rugby scrum because you see linemen pushing running backs across the 1 yard line when there's a jam. You see wide receivers pushing running backs across the goal line when it's a direct snap. So you can't tell me that this is not a football play because we see renditions of it all the time. I will say that it's harder for other teams to do and succeed at. Sorry, your quarterback can't squat 600 pounds. Get over it. I'm glad it's staying. I'm sure we'll be back in the offseason for more discussions. But until you can prove a valid reason that it is A, not a football play, or B, causing serious and numerical injuries, you have no reason to ban the play. Just get better at defending it.
Yeah, I think that's Peter speaking like
That's the Eagles speaking there. Yeah.
Well, yes, and I do agree. I'm of the thing. You've got to stop it. You've got to find a way to stop it. I think that's and again, it's one team is doing it really well. I know there's been discussion that the Bills were doing some iteration of it with Josh Allen, but then there was the argument, oh, it's just a quarterback sneak, but one team has, perfected it at a perfect level. I feel like if more teams, I think to continue on Peter's point about the stopping it, and more teams being able to do it, I think if there were more teams that did it and did it at such a high level, yeah, I would be on the other side of the argument where it's like, okay, yes, there was a sample size of at least 5 teams that do it and succeed at like a 90% rate in addition to the Eagles. But it is just one team that has perfected it to a science. And I think at that point, you've just got to find a way to stop it. The other 31 teams have got to find a way to stop it. That's where my stance is. I do kind of understand, the discourse about it, but let me bring this up. 2 years ago, it was a little bit of a discussion when the Eagles were in the Super Bowl against the Chiefs. They lost. Now, let me paint a hypothetical here, and let me see your guys' thoughts here. Let's say the Eagles lose in the first round of these past playoffs, don't make it any further than that, and we have a different champion, Chiefs or some other team. Do you think there is a proposal at all? Or is this a part of the reason is because the Super Bowl champion did it at a high level and that's brought to the table? I think that's an equation here, and I would like to get your guys' thoughts as well.
I think that there was discussions prior to the playoffs of the play in general. So I don't think that it is entirely impossible to say that there would have been a proposal. But I do understand it might not have been by the Packers, but there might have been a proposal from a different team.
Yeah, I think it's just, it's something that, like you said, they discussed it when the Eagles were playing the Chiefs the first time in the Super Bowl, but I'm just wondering, if there's a small part of it that the reason why it came to this vote is due to it.
I think it got more support, definitely, for the cause after the Eagles' success in this postseason and the success they've had running it over the past couple of seasons. I think that's definitely drawn support. I mean, for the ban, I think there's no denying that.
When you asked if there would be more hype around if the Eagles would have maintained a quieter postseason presence, I think it could have been brought up, but I don't think there would have been more of a such a close call in the votes. I think it would have been more of like a distance vote,
16-16 or something, might,
something like
might have been
that.
more of an even
Because I
split.
just feel like when the Eagles did it, it got them a lot of wins in very close games and in big games. You look back and the number of times that the Eagles were fourth down and 2 or fourth down and 3 with the goal line ahead of them or the first down line ahead of them, and they're succeeding and they're winning these games because they have that extended clock. They have a new fresh set of downs. Teams like, oh well, that would have been a punt for any other team. But I mean, think about it in a different way. The Buffalo Bills tried it. They succeeded a bunch of times last year doing it with Josh Allen, right? Other teams have tried it. I watched the Lions try it last year. I watched, other teams try their own rendition of the Tush Push. Some were more successful than others. But then it's almost, to me, it's almost like saying because of one team and one person who is really, really good at doing it, you're not allowed to do it anymore. Like, it's just, to me, it's like, at what point do we just say a football team has a trick play, which, by the way, the Chiefs ran like 5 trick plays in the postseason the last 2 years. One was where everyone's running in a circle and running to the line. Like, when have you ever seen that in football? Right? And teams can't stop it because they get confused. So are we just going to ban trick plays altogether? Or are we just going to admit that one team can have their one signature play and let it go and just try to figure out how to stop it?
The tush push isn't even a trick play. It's just a version. It is a QB sneak that the Eagles have perfected. And I'll get my opinion out there right now. I don't think it should be banned. It's the NFL. It's football. Get over it. Figure out how to stop it, or start running it yourselves. All right. That's my honest to God opinion on it. I think it's ridiculous that just some version of a QB sneak is trying to be banned just because, and I seriously, just because the Eagles have ran it that well. I mean, that's how it is to me. I agree with Peter on the point that maybe some teams are trying to lean into the idea that it can cause injury or is an injury-inducing play, and I don't get that. I mean, I don't see that.
They should be worried about fumbles,
yeah,
scrums. That's
exactly.
where injuries happen.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So that is ridiculous. I think it's football. Let it go. It should be fine. Stop whining and about it and figure out how to stop it. How about that?
when it comes to the competitive side of things, I'm with you guys. I think that it's congratulations to the Eagles for coming up with an amazing play and for being so great at it. And honestly, teams should probably figure out a way to stop it. I think, honestly, Jacksonville had the best way to do it, which is like just take the linebackers and push the defensive linemen, do the exact same thing on the other side, because then it's just, tug of war, basically. The only thing that I will, put into it is that there is a little concern when it comes to where people are mechanically in terms of the tush push for an injury perspective. As somebody who considered going into the medical field and decided against it, I do have a little bit of an opinion there, where it's, they are in the head and neck area. There is an extra force beyond just one person pushing them, because now there's the extra force of the people from behind pushing. So it's a lot more force going on that head and neck area of the defenders and even of the offensive players too. But I mean, if there's no injuries happening now, then obviously we can't say that's why it should be banned. But who knows? Eventually there could be an injury down the line. Somebody gets paralyzed, and then we're having this discussion all over again.
I mean, with football, any sort of you're worried about any sort of head or neck injury. I mean, concussion, paralysis, any sort of anything like that is definitely a no-no. And football, you do see them sometimes. So obviously, there haven't been any reports about any sort of head or neck injuries, any sort of increased concussion. I feel like I would have seen something like that if there would have been like any sort of increased concussion with the tush push or anything like that. I do think that if there it does happen to be a neck injury or an increased concussion rate with the tush push, I do feel like that may be the camel that or the straw that breaks the camel's back, and that would probably turn that vote into a disqualification of the tush push. I feel like it's one serious neck injury away from being taken away.
I think Sam, though, the player, I think you look at the player, is Jalen Hurts. If Jalen Hurts gets, a concussion or neck injury, because he's going to be the one that it's going to continue to happen. He's going to be the center of it. If he is out with injuries like this, or that, like Sam and Justin and Peter bringing the medical knowledge into the podcast, great stuff, guys. But I think he's the crux of it at that point. If he gets he's the one that's really diving in there. So, and you've got the other players in the scrum, but he's diving in there, he's getting the push, the contact's happening. So, and he's the big name too that's really associated with Kelsey now out of the league. It's Jalen Hurts. He is the player Peter brought up earlier. So we'll see. We'll see how this plays out.
I'm sure because it wasn't banned, I'm sure we're going to see it 50 more times this year from Philadelphia and at least 30 more from Buffalo. So let's go, guys. Let's go. Get that yard. Speaking of the Buffalo Bills, and moving on to our final quick hits topic, the Bills are going to be featured for the first time ever on the HBO series Hard Knocks. And I just wanted to speak quickly as a Bills fan to say, I don't like that. I don't like that at all.
I thought you were going to be saying, I'm watching every episode. Oh, no.
I will be watching every episode. But I don't like it. I don't like it.
What, is it like a curse?
No, it's not a curse.
It's a distraction
Mm-hmm.
for the team, for the players. This is why I don't like this stupid little season camera crap, because it creates unnecessary drama. It's the media. It creates unnecessary drama. It's a distraction from the game, from the scheme, from the team, because now not only are you worried about your season, I gotta go do a quick diary room interview about how much Shakir pissed me off yesterday.
That's not how Hard Knocks works, Peter. That is not how that is not what they do.
I don't think they're trying to piss the players
It's
off.
not reality TV, Peter.
It's not The Office,
Simple distraction to the players. There was no Hard Knocks a couple years ago, and no one gave a crap. It's a distraction to the team. It's a distraction to the players.
I'm just gonna say, Jake and I, obviously communications majors. Listen, it's media for the fans. The fans want it. There's demand for it because NFL fans every year watch Hard Knocks. The players are professionals. They're around the media basically 24/7 during the season anyway. All right, so they have to learn how to handle it like professionals. and most of them do. I get, sure, you could say maybe it's a bit distracting, and maybe for some guys it is, but honestly, the majority of them have to do interviews and have media time anyway. I don't see it that way as that big of a distraction. You're there to do your job. They're just there to film and to do interviews and talk mainly with coaches and, staff behind the scenes who are working with like general managers and that kind of thing. I think it's just a cool way to get an in-depth look at a team's season. I don't see it as a big issue, distracting a team. And I think that's a bunch of nonsense. The players should not let it distract them.
Can I play devil? Can I play devil's advocate? Netflix did a documentary on the Boston Red Sox. Anyways, this isn't really. It's not directly related to Knocks, but it's similar to going into the locker room, getting a view of the season, whatever. Netflix did a documentary on the Red Sox. Jaron Duran, an outfielder for the Red Sox, talked about his mental health concerns over the past years that he's had. He's been doing a lot better with them. There's an interaction with the fan. I believe it was with the Cleveland Guardians, where a fan. I'm not going to say exactly what he said because I don't want any trigger warnings or anything like that. But he made some very rude comments to Jaron Duran that he took very personally, and I don't think people would have known that information if it wasn't for the documentary. Now, what Nate is saying, it's media. Players have to handle themselves professionally. Um, they have to go about their business, stuff like that. But with a lot of these documentaries, a lot of people, a lot of the players want to be candid. They want to be candid with the fans. They don't want to be seen as some higher up, I'm better than everyone type of thing. They're just other people, but they want to explain, but they want to be able to expand on those thoughts with them. But being candid and being in the position you are does lead to some of that information being explained or being taken out.
Just to be clear, I'm not saying that this can't create friction in the locker room or between players, but at the end of the day, they are professionals. It is their job. They're grown ass men. They need to learn how to handle it like grown men. All right, that's all I'm saying, Peter. That's all I'm saying to that point.
Grown men and women, because there's women on the coaching
There's
staff.
women
They
too.
Highlight,
Yeah.
Yes, and also I think Sam brought up a huge point, and Nate mentioned this as well, the humanized aspect of sports. I think people are so lost on that too these days, where, we treat these athletes and coaching staff members sometimes as robots. And this even kind of goes into a conversation of the overhyping young quarterbacks and the expectations and the, you have to do this, you have to present yourself like this. These shows and documentaries and stuff like that, they really humanize these players that grow to such a stature that people, role models and stuff. This allows another inside look. It's almost serves an expanded look of getting an autograph signed or getting a wonderful like backstage pass at a concert. It gives people an inside look and gives them a connection to these players they maybe have never met in their life. Interested to see. I wonder if Josh Allen and his ascension had anything to do with them being like, let's take a look at those Bills. Let's take a look at what's going on there and their success year in and year out with him at the helm. I'm just curious to see what the boardroom decision was like for that.
I would say that the two biggest reasons that they would have chosen the Bills this year, I guess three biggest reasons. Number one is because they changed the rules so that teams that have been in the playoffs can no longer say no. Number two, I think Josh Allen, rising to stardom, winning the MVP, that has something to do with it. Getting with Haley Steinfeld as well as that's a piece of it. But the third thing is this is the last year the Bills are playing in their stadium that they've been playing in since 1970. So I think that that's got something to do with it as well. That's going to be a storyline throughout the entire thing and throughout the entire year in the NFL.
Yeah, those are great reasons. Yeah, I'd love put the camera in the boardroom when they pick the team. I want to figure out the decisions that they go through. Well, tune it yourself to Hard Knocks and see how it plays out. As Justin is going to be sweating there in his chair watching Josh Allen throw one incompletion and saying the season is over. No, go out, watch it. It should be a great show and another great set of segments today, Justin, in the NFL. We've got a few other quick topics here to wrap up. Nate, the end of the soccer season across the pond, wrapping up in a handful of different leagues, not only, of course, the Premier League, but other big-time leagues across Europe. What is the breakdown, Nate? Who is struggling? Who is thriving at the season's end?
Yes, Jake, it is the end of the European soccer season. Of course, here in America, the MLS is kind of just starting, getting to the middle of their season, but across the pond, as you so eloquently put it, they are wrapping things up. I am a huge soccer fan. As you guys know, I follow it. And I follow a lot of the major leagues and teams over there. The Premier League, I would argue, is the biggest league, and that is where I will start with, where my favorite team, the Liverpool, the Reds, have been crowned Premier League champions. It has been confirmed. They will officially raise the trophy tomorrow after their game against Crystal Palace. It is their 20th league title, which ties them at the top with Manchester United for most English league titles. So I'm very excited, very happy about that. My guy, Mohamed Salah, was just announced as Premier League Player of the Season today. As of right now, he has 28 goals and 18 assists in the season. He's got one more game tomorrow. We'll see if he can add on to that tally, but a very, very impressive season for him. Very dominant. So I couldn't be happier as a Liverpool fan that they're in the position they're in and that they will be lifting the Premier League trophy tomorrow, ahead of Arsenal, who is in second, Man City, who finished third, had a bit of a down year after having won 4 straight Premier Leagues. So kind of dominating the Premier League there was Manchester City for the past 4 seasons. That has come to an end this year. They are most likely going to finish third. And then you have Newcastle in fourth and Chelsea in fifth at the moment, which this year the Premier League will get top 5 teams get a qualification to the Champions League next season, which is a whole thing that, as you know, the top teams get into the Champions League, which is the top competition for all teams in Europe from all the countries in Europe, just to put it simply.
Great explanation, Nate. Anything out? Any other teams from any other leagues standing out to you?
I think we have to shout out really quick Barcelona. They pipped Real Madrid to the La Liga title, just beating them out. Real Madrid, biggest team in the world, kind of spends the most. I mean, they haven't had to spend the most money, but they always attract top young talent. They have Kylian Mbappe signed last summer on a free. He's come in. He's really played well. But Real Madrid this season have kind of struggled, got knocked out of the Champions League, and fell to Barcelona. Did not beat them once this year. Barcelona beat them in the Spanish Cup final, and they have beaten them for the La Liga title behind superstars like Lewandowski and young kids like Lamine Yamal, who's only 17 years old and starting every game for Barcelona. People are calling him, the next generation's Messi and Ronaldo. A lot of talk around him. So got to shout out them. Another shout out, Bayern Munich won the Bundesliga. I only say this because Harry Kane, who is infamously a very successful striker for the Tottenham Hotspurs in the Premier League, never won a trophy with Tottenham. Tottenham cannot. They don't win trophies. He went to Bayern Munich, and he has finally won his first trophy in his career. After it's been a long time. I think he's like 32 or 33. So it's been quite some time. He finally won his first trophy in the Bundesliga with Bayern Munich. So quick shout out to them. And then really to end the European season, next Saturday is the Champions League final, where you have PSG, Paris Saint-Germain, taking on Inter Milan. So it should be a good matchup. Two very good teams. PSG's never won the Champions League, so they're looking to win their first. And Inter Milan is looking to win their fourth ever Champions League. That'll be determined next Saturday. So I'm going to go PSG to win their first, but it'll be an exciting game for sure.
Wow, Tottenham's like the Cowboys. Can't get over the hump.
Yes.
Nate. Is that's
Yeah,
what I'm?
that's accurate.
I've seen
That is
those
an accurate
comparisons. Yeah.
However, I must say, I didn't even have this in my notes, but Tottenham did just win the Europa League, which
Okay.
is like
Okay.
the secondary. It's so you have the Champions
Okay.
League and then the Europa League. It's the second tier European competition. Yeah, so they did just win that. It's their first trophy in 17 years. Fun fact. So there you go. It's been a while for those Tottenham fans.
Yeah, well, great report, Nate. We'll have to get to some hockey, too, and in one of these episodes, coming to an end down, just like the NBA, to the Final Four. Some great hockey, great series as well, and a great wrap-up there across the pond, say it again, in Europe for all of those leagues, championships wrapping up. We've got one more segment on the pod, a long episode today. Thank you, everyone, for sticking around with us. Sam, we're gonna go back to you. You're like the engine, you're like the caboose at the end of this great train, wrapping us up. An MLB ban. Sam, what is going on with that? Past deceased players, cheaters that are going to be in the Hall of Fame. What is going on here, Sam?
Yeah, Jake. So this was kind of something interesting that happened last week. Rob Manfred, commissioner for MLB baseball, has kind of lifted the lifetime ban on a few players who were previously banned for going against MLB policy, stuff like that. He actually he came up with a quote, and I felt like it was very it kind of speaks to some of these players. If they're not alive, it basically went that if they're not alive anymore, they've served their time in this lifetime ban, and they should kind of be able to. They can't defend themselves anymore. They're gone. They can't speak. They can't defend themselves. So it's kind of time that some of these bans should be lifted. Is basically kind of what he said. So two players that really stuck out to me that were a part of there's a whole list of players that were a part that had this ban lifted. Two of them were Pete Rose, a former Reds and former Phillies player, helped the Phillies win their first World Series in 1980. Probably one of the best hitters in MLB baseball. Um, by far. And Shoeless Joe Jackson. Shoeless Joe Jackson was a part of the Black Sox, the White Sox team in 1919 that fixed the game against the Reds for the World Series. A couple of these guys stick out to me because Pete Rose was banned. He was when he was the manager of the Reds. He actually was betting on his own team to win games. The MLB found out it did not go well, and he was banned from baseball. Shoeless Joe was found to be a part of the Black Sox team. He did accept the 5,000, I believe it was $5,000 bribe, which in that time was a lot of money. There was evidence that he did bring it up to his manager. His manager disregarded it. I don't believe he committed an error during the World Series. He actually hit the only series home run during the games of the World Series, which was very weird if he was trying to fix the game, if he only hit the only series home run. He was also a fantastic baseball player. He was unfortunately banned by Kennesaw Mountain Landis, who was the first MLB commissioner and was never allowed to enter the Hall of Fame. Now, with this ban, it is kind of up to the Baseball Hall of Fame itself whether these players will be allowed to be accepted as through the Veterans Committee or through some other sort of committee that to be allowed to be up for vote for the Hall of Fame. But as far as MLB goes, their lifetime ban has been lifted. So we'll have to kind of see with this next round of voting for the Hall of Fame if these players will be allowed to be entered. But I don't know. I feel like this is a pretty big win for these two and for a couple other players just to finally get some of the recognition they may deserve. Especially for these two, Pete Rose and Joe Jackson. Again, a whole list of other Black Sox players and a couple other people who were mentioned. I don't remember the names off the top of the head, but at least for these two players that I mentioned, Pete Rose and Shoeless Joe Jackson, I feel like this is a pretty big win for them, in my opinion.
So I just have two questions about this MLB ban thing because I was reading into it trying to understand it. Is this only for players who are deceased? Is my first question. And my second question is: Does this only apply to players who are arguing or trying to get themselves in the Hall of Fame?
So as far as I know, yes, this is for players who have passed away. Like Rob Manfred said, that like these players can't defend themselves anymore. They're not here. They're not alive with us today, unfortunately.
Is it only for the players who are out for trying to get into the Hall of Fame, or is it for players who may want to go into their specific team's Hall of Fame, or for like their records to be shown as like, oh, this player broke this record, even though they were banned?
I don't know. Don't quote me on it. I think Pete Rose is already in the Reds Hall of Fame, I would say. Don't quote me on that. I would think he would be, but I'm not 100% sure. As far as this is just for the MLB in general, like so for the MLB as a whole, the ban has been lifted off. We're just kind of reading an article from ESPN. It is up to the Hall of Fame itself if these players can be inducted into the Hall of Fame. The Hall of Fame is its own entity in this situation, so it's kind of up to them whether they should be allowed to be entered into the Hall of Fame. But this ban allows um, that process to start happening if it's able to.
Sam, I know you kind of gave your thoughts, and great for these players that have passed. I'm just wondering why now. I think that was something that a lot of people what sparked this because these guys have been banned for so many years. It really became precedent. This is how Major League Baseball was cracking down on these players that did, you know, some to more degrees than others, heinous things away from the game or involved with the game that was not allowed. So why is it now? Why, like, what kind of conversations were had to allow this? And what chances do it give the steroid guys? I know it's deceased players, but at some point those guys are going to pass away, and some of them have been very vocal about wanting to be in the Hall of Fame or being on ballots for multiple years. So even though they passed the 10 years, would they be allowed to be back on the ballot? How would that work? I think is another question moving forward. So again, it's one of these things we talk about. I wonder, see how it plays out, see how these votes go, but just very interested on the timing and how it affects, some of the recent steroid users that weren't voted in on the ballot on among passing, and seeing if that impacts something moving forward.
A lot of people were also wondering why now, why not when because Pete Rose died last year in at toward the end of 2024, and a lot of people were kind of scratching their head. Well, it would have been nice if he was alive that he would have made this decision, or why kind of just randomly in 2025 are we making this decision? Because Shoeless Joe's been like it's over 100 years now that he's been banned. And there's been multiple efforts to kind of have at least his name cleared. I don't know about the other Black Sox players, but there's been multiple efforts to have his name cleared, and the MLB has resisted it pretty sternly. But for right now, I don't know. I don't know what it looks like. I think this opens the door for the steroid players where they could be on a veterans committee type of vote, like after their 10 years pass, kind of like I'm thinking about Ted Simmons right now, a couple other people, more who were recently inducted, who kind of went through Veterans Committee. Um, I think this opens the door for them to kind of have that forgiveness, if that's the word we're going to use from the MLB. I think this opens the door for them, and I think it allows um, them to have at least some consideration. Now, again, this is just for the MLB. The Hall of Fame can make its own decision on whether the steroid guys even make it onto a ballot or not. But as far as the MLB is concerned, yeah, I think this opens up the door for any player who's been banned from uh, for the steroids, but I guess we won't really know until a situation like that occurs, or until another commissioner, when those guys start to die, makes a decision like that. So I guess we'll just kind of have to see how that plays out in the future.
Yep, they've dusted off the dusty door. They put the key in, they opened it up, and we'll have to see what is on the other side. Among all these hypotheticals, something that is not a hypothetical is you tuning in to another episode of the Lunch Hour Sports Podcast, the next one that we put together. But thank you for sticking with us over an hour and 20 minutes of content. We really appreciate all of the views. If you tuned in for NBA, NFL, baseball, band, some soccer action, thank you for tuning in. Thank you for listening to another episode of the Lunch Hour Sports Podcast.